Okay, so the last type of naming that you'll have to do is with covalent compounds, and these are actually the easiest type of compound to name. You don't have to deal with charges, you don't have to deal with polyatomic ions. All you're looking at is the periodic table, and also a list of prefixes, which I did give you in that tutorial, starting with mono all the way to deca. Now, one thing, just in case you missed it, concerning mono, when you have the only time that you're going to use the prefix mono is on the second half of a compound. You're not going to use it on the first half. If that were the case, then you'd have to have mono in almost every single compound. So that's one of the reasons why that's not there. So for the first half, you don't have to worry about it. For the second half, if you only have one element, then yeah, you have to put mono down. So here's the first example. You have N2O4. Now, like I showed you with the ionic compounds, first thing you want to do is just split that in half, and then look at the first half of this compound. In this case, if you look at N2, you notice that's a nonmetal, so that's why you consider this to be a covalent compound. So now you're just going to go about naming this. So N, if you look on the periodic table, is just plain nitrogen, and because it's the first half of this compound, it is just plain nitrogen. So you just put nitrogen down. Now you do have to take into consideration the subscripts, which in this case you have a 2. So if you look at your prefixes, you'll notice that 2 is di. So you have dinitrogen. So now you look at the oxygen, or the O in this case. Anything, just as a reminder, anything on the second half of the compound needs to have an IDE ending. So even though O is oxygen, this would actually be oxide. And you do need to take into consideration the 4. Which if you look at your prefixes is actually tetra. So in this case you'd have dinitrogen tetraoxide for this, for the name for this compound. Now anytime you have two vowels, one after each other, like in this case you have the A of tetra and the O of oxide, you can get rid of the ending there and have tetraoxide. So it's just RO, and you don't have the A there at all. Alright, for the next one, again, split in half. Cl is a nonmetal, so that's your covalent compound. So that means you just deal with you use the periodic table to name this. So 2 is di. Cl is just plain chlorine, and again, it would be the regular ending because of the fact that it's the first half of the compound, so it's dichlorine. And then for the O, because it's the second half, it'd have an IDE ending, so it's oxide, and then 6 is hexa. So you'd have hexaoxide, or hexoxide, something along those lines, because again, you have that double vowel that you can get rid of. Now, if we were going the opposite way, you're just looking at the name that you'd find in the periodic table. So in this case, you have sulfur. Sulfur, if you look on the periodic table, the symbol is S. Di means 2, so it's just S2. Chloride, if you look on the periodic table, would be just plain chlorine. Again, it's the second half of the compound, so that's why the IDE ending's there. So you'd have Cl, and then di again is 2. So S2Cl2, and that would be the formula. You don't have to crisscross anything. It's just going to be what you see within the name. And then the last example in this case, you have phosphorus, which phosphorus is just plain P. You have tetra, which tetra is 4. Decoxide, oxide, again, it's the second half, so it has an IDE ending. That's just plain oxygen. And then dec, or deca, would be 10. So the formula for this would be P4O10. So that concludes naming between the two types of compounds, between ionic compounds and covalent compounds. In the next video, you're going to deal with hydrates, which is a little bit of a mix between the two. Just remember, like I said, when you see a problem like this on a test or on the AP exam, it's not going to be separated out as ionic compounds or covalent compounds. You are going to need to know how to figure that out in order to be able to name that particular compound correctly.